The scream shattered the quiet elegance of the dining room just after 8:15 p.m. Crystal glasses rattled on their stems as heads turned. An older man in a gray suit slumped sideways in his chair, knocking over a wine bottle that crashed to the floor. Someone yelled for help. Someone else backed away so fast their heels slipped against the marble. Then the room exploded into chaos. Waiters froze. Guests grabbed handbags and coats and ran for the exits. A woman in pearls clutched her chest and whispered, "Not again." No one stepped forward. No one bent down. Everyone just watched. At the center of it all, the man lay crumpled on the floor, his skin pale, lips turning a grayish blue. Emily, a waitress in a plain black uniform, was the only one who moved toward him. Her tray clattered to the ground as she dropped to her knees, fingers already at his neck checking for a pulse. Her hands trembled, but they didn't stop. She pressed down on his chest in a steady rhythm, counting softly under her breath. Her heart raced, but her training took over. 1, 2, 3. Just like her dad taught her on an old pillow back when she was a kid. Around her, the wealthy whispered and scoffed. One man laughed and nudged his friend. "She's just trying to be a hero." Another pulled out his phone and hit record. A couple in the corner started live streaming, calling it Waitress Gate. Emily didn't hear them. Or maybe she did, and just kept going anyway. Her hair slipped from its tight knot. Her breath came in quick bursts. But her hands never left his chest. No one helped her. No one stopped the cameras. No one believed she could save him. Emily was 25 and used to being underestimated. She didn't mind. In fact, she preferred it that way. People paid less attention when they thought you had nothing to offer. That gave her space to work, to listen, and to watch how the world moved. She didn't speak unless she had something to say. That habit had made her invisible to some, but solid to others. Her childhood had been built around quiet lessons. Her father, a firefighter, was the type of man who said little and did much. He didn't believe in showing off. He believed in readiness. One night, when she was 14, he handed her an old couch pillow and showed her how to press both palms into it. He guided her rhythm, slow and firm, told her to count out loud. She thought it was a silly drill, but he had looked her in the eye and said, "Someday this might matter." She never forgot the way he said it. A year later, he died of a heart attack on a call he never returned from. They told her he went quickly. That didn't help much. Emily grew up with questions she didn't ask and feelings she didn't show. She got good grades, kept to herself, and didn't cause trouble. People assumed she was shy, but really, she was just careful. She saw what happened when people spoke too soon or reached too far. At 18, she had a full scholarship lined up and an open door back into the comfortable life her mother had kept hidden for years. But she turned both down. She didn't want shortcuts. She didn't want to be someone's project or someone's daughter in the press. Instead, she moved to the city and got a job in food service. The first one was at a crowded sandwich shop near Penn Station. Then came bartending, a bakery, and eventually the fine dining place with starched white napkins and wine bottles that cost more than her rent. She didn't pick the place because it impressed her. She picked it because it challenged her. The customers weren't kind. The managers cared more about appearance than fairness. She liked that. If she could survive here, she could survive anywhere. No one at the restaurant knew about her family name. She didn't talk about it, didn't post about it. The few who recognized her from some old magazine feature said nothing, and she let them believe whatever they wanted. There was power in silence. She learned to move, like she belonged without ever claiming a place. She got good at being the one who stayed late, took the worst shifts, and never asked for favors. That made her dependable and forgettable, just the way she needed it. But hiding wealth didn't mean she resented it. Emily had money in an account she never touched. It was there if she needed it. But she didn't. Not yet. She wanted to feel the weight of things first. She wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. To know what it meant to struggle, to fail, and to recover. To know, without question, that she'd earned every inch of herself. That's why she didn't complain when customers snapped their fingers at her or acted like she was beneath them. She just smiled, wrote down their orders, and moved on. What they never saw was the girl who'd grown up watching her dad walk into fires, the one who learned to stay calm under pressure, to act first and think later when lives were on the line, the one who had trained her muscles to remember what her heart still feared. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just trying to be ready, in case that someday ever showed up. Emily pressed harder, her hands locked together, counting quietly with each compression. The man's chest barely moved beneath her, but she kept going. Her knees dug into the marble, her palms slick with sweat, her breath coming fast. She didn't dare look up. Somewhere to her left, a woman in a silk dress laughed under her breath and muttered to her date. He smirked and raised his phone to record. "She's going to crack his ribs," he said like it was a joke. The woman nodded, said something about lawsuits, and how this would be all over the internet by morning. Another table joined in. Someone said, "Isn't that the same girl who spilled the Merlot last week? Figures she'd find a way to make it worse." Behind her, the manager stood with his arms crossed. He didn't move forward, didn't call for help. When the young busboy stepped out from the kitchen, eyes wide and unsure, the manager caught him with a look and a low warning. "Stay out of it. You're not trained." The boy hesitated, his fists clenched at his sides, then slowly stepped back. He never looked away. Emily's arms burned, but she didn't slow down. The man's skin felt colder now. Her knuckles whitened from effort. Her jaw was locked. She kept her focus on the rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Her father's voice stayed in her head. "Keep going. Kid, stay steady." She blinked back the sting in her eyes and reset her posture. Someone behind her said, "This is ridiculous." A waitress trying to play hero. Another chimed in. "Maybe she wants attention. Maybe she's hoping for a bonus." There was a laugh, then the unmistakable click of another phone camera. The lights from screens cast flickers against the chandeliers. Jenna, another server, leaned into a bartender and whispered something. Emily caught the words. "She's going to get fired, or sued, or both." The bartender shrugged, didn't look up, and went back to polishing glasses. But Emily didn't stop. She didn't defend herself. Her face stayed still, her hands steady. She didn't need them to understand. She just needed him to live. The rest could wait. The judgment, the whispers, the footage that would follow her for years. All of it could burn. For now, she just pressed, breathed, counted, and hoped. Emily's arms felt like concrete, but she didn't let up. Her rhythm stayed exact. Her hands moved with steady force, even as the voices around her grew louder. She kept her eyes locked on the man's face, willing it to change, waiting for anything. His skin was still gray, lips tinged with blue. Her heartbeat roared in her ears, drowning everything else out. Then, just as her fingers adjusted position for another round, his chest jerked. It wasn't much. A twitch, a catch, then a low, rattling gasp. She froze. The man's mouth opened and dragged in air like he hadn't breathed in hours. His eyes fluttered. "They open. The stopped." Chairs squeaked. Forks paused mid-air. Phones dropped to laps. One of the guests closest to Emily actually stepped backward, like he was afraid. The silence broke with the sound of footsteps as a man in a white coat pushed through the crowd. He knelt quickly beside her, stethoscope swinging, voice low and calm as he checked the man's breathing. Pulse and airway. He looked at Emily and nodded once. "You did everything right." He said, "Textbook CPR." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. It reached the corners of the room. It hung in the air longer than the laughs had. Emily sat back slowly, arms limp, breath shaky. Her hands trembled in her lap. Sweat clung to her jawline. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. The man on the floor was alive, and that was all that mattered. Around her, no one said anything. The phone screens dimmed. A woman near the entrance looked down at her shoes. A man who had snorted earlier wiped his palms on his trousers and turned away. The busboy stood frozen behind the bar, eyes wide, mouth parted. No one laughed now. Emily looked down at her hands. Red, shaking, still warm from the pressure. She hadn't done it for thanks. She hadn't done it for a camera. She had done it because she knew how, and because no one else had even tried. The man coughed again. A real cough. His hand reached for his chest. Emily watched him breathe. In. Out. The sound filled the room like thunder. She closed her eyes for half a second, let herself feel the relief, then opened them and got ready for whatever came next. The man's eyes moved slowly, searching the room as if trying to place himself. He blinked a few times, then turned his head toward Emily. His voice cracked when he spoke, low and rough, but every word carried weight. "What is your name?" The question cut through the silence like a wire pulled tight. Emily hesitated. She looked around, unsure if he was talking to her or someone behind her. The room held still. Someone shifted in their chair, but no one spoke. One of the guests whispered. He didn't even thank her. Another replied, "What a cold man." Near the back, a girl who had live-streamed the entire scene suddenly looked down at her phone, her face pale. She tapped frantically, trying to delete the clip. It was already too late. The video had over 1,000 views in under 5 minutes. Her notifications wouldn't stop. Emily finally said her name, quiet but steady. Her voice sounded smaller than it felt. The man took a breath, slow and deliberate. His gaze never left her. Then, without looking at anyone else, he spoke again. "I want her name added to every version of my will." No one moved. Someone gasped. A fork clattered to the floor. One woman muttered, "Did he just say that?" A man near the bar leaned forward in disbelief. The girl with the phone lowered it to her lap and stared straight ahead. All at once, the energy in the room shifted. The same people who had laughed now sat stunned, trying to make sense of what they'd heard. Emily didn't say anything. She didn't ask why. She just nodded once, her posture quiet but unshaken. Around her, the judgment didn't vanish. It just changed shape. Now it came with confusion, regret, and a flicker of fear. She had done the unthinkable. She had saved a man's life, and he had just changed hers in front of everyone. Whispers moved like wind through the room. William Hart. Someone finally said his name aloud, and it spread in stunned waves. A billionaire, real estate, investments, media holdings, one of the wealthiest men in America. A man most people in the room had only seen on magazine covers or Forbes lists. No one had recognized him before. He looked different out of his usual suit, without the polished armor of wealth. Now, with his life just given back to him. The truth settled like dust across the white tablecloths. Emily stayed where she was, arms limp at her sides. She didn't blink when the name came up. She didn't correct anyone. One man at a corner table muttered something about inheritance. A woman adjusted her scarf and stared at her untouched wine. The manager had stepped aside completely. A few employees exchanged glances but stayed still. Then someone asked, almost too quiet to hear, "Is she related to him?" The answer didn't come from Emily. It came from the way she stood. Not proud, not smug, just sure. The calm in her face, the stillness in her posture, said more than any explanation could. She didn't look like someone hoping to belong. She looked like someone who had chosen not to claim something she already owned. The truth spilled slowly. A reporter who had followed William Hart's business history remembered a story from years ago. A falling out. A granddaughter who refused to join the board. Who said no to trust funds. Who vanished from headlines right after college. No lawsuits. No drama. Just gone. Now. Here she was. Working double shifts. Pouring wine. Getting mocked on camera by the same people who once tried to invest in her grandfather's companies. The room hadn't just judged the wrong person. It had misjudged someone who knew exactly who she was. Then the door opened, and someone stepped inside. Not rushed. Not loud. Just a quiet presence moving through the space. Daniel. Her husband. Tall. Solid. Dressed simple but precise. He didn't speak. Didn't ask questions. Just walked straight to Emily and rested a hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch or turn. She just leaned slightly into the touch. That was enough. People recognized him too. Not by name, but by how others reacted. A woman near the bar dropped her phone. A man in a suit cleared his throat and looked away. The air shifted again. Heavier now. Emily didn't explain anything. She didn't need to. In less than an hour, she had gone from invisible to unforgettable, and all she had done was exactly what her father once told her to do. Stay calm. Stay ready. Do the right thing, even if no one believes you belong. By the next morning, the video had gone viral, not the one where Emily performed CPR, but the one that showed guests laughing at her while she tried to save a man's life. The sound bites were brutal. Faces were clear, and names surfaced fast. The woman in the green dress, who had smirked and whispered that Emily was just faking it for attention, had her hedge fund flooded with withdrawal requests by 9:45 a.m. By noon, 3 investors had publicly severed ties. Her apology came late and didn't land, and the man who had filmed her smirking, narrating, lost his consulting contract by the end of the week. A client had recognized his voice and asked for him to be removed. The tweet announcing his exit didn't mention Emily. It didn't need to. Everyone already knew. At the restaurant, things changed in ways that weren't loud, but you could feel them. The servers who once rolled their eyes behind her back now paused to hold doors or refill her water without asking. The manager, who used to glance through her like she wasn't there, suddenly started scheduling her for better tables and double-checking if she needed breaks. No one said why. No one apologized out loud, but their movements said it for them. Jenna, the one who'd whispered about lawsuits that night, brought Emily a coffee 2 mornings in a row. She didn't say a word when she set it down, just nodded once and kept moving. Emily took the cup without comment. That was enough. Even the kitchen staff had softened. Orders were passed with a little more care. The music played lower during prep. Conversations in the back didn't stop when she walked in. But they changed tone. Not everyone knew what had happened, but enough did. Guests noticed it, too. The regulars who used to ignore her now left tips folded neatly under their plates. One man left a note on a napkin. It said, "Thank you." Not for anything specific. Just thank you. Emily didn't bring it up. She didn't need to. She still wore the same black uniform, tied her hair the same way, clocked in and out on time. But people watched her now. Not with suspicion, not with pity, just with the quiet recognition that they'd gotten it wrong. No one mentioned the name William Hart aloud, but they felt it. In the way they moved around her, in the weight of what they didn't say. The arrogance hadn't disappeared. It had just learned to keep quiet when she was near. It was just after 9:30 p.m. on a Thursday when the last guest left. The restaurant lights dimmed to their quiet evening glow. Emily moved from table to table, wiping crumbs from linen and folding napkins with practiced hands. Her body followed routine, but the air around her felt different. Staff gave her space without being distant. They watched her without staring. The shift in tone was subtle, but real. The door opened, and Daniel stepped in without a word. He wore a dark coat, collar turned up, hair slightly windblown. He didn't need to look around. He knew exactly where she'd be. She met his eyes, gave a small nod, and untied her apron. They didn't hug, didn't speak. He held the door as she walked through, and that was enough. Outside, the night was cool. A food cart waited at the curb, steam rising from a pot of broth. The vendor behind it watched them pass, arms tucked into his jacket. He remembered her. A few winters back, she'd slipped him a coffee on a freezing night when she thought no one noticed. She hadn't said anything then. She didn't say anything now. He smiled, quietly. Back inside, the staff finished closing tasks with more care than usual. No one rushed. No one raised their voice. The place didn't belong to her, but it moved differently when she was there. No applause, no spotlights, just gravity. Something earned, something known. Emily and Daniel disappeared into the sidewalk crowd, their steps even, and unhurried. She didn't look back at the building behind her. She didn't need to. The story had already left its mark. Her story wasn't loud. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't meant to be a headline, but it stayed. In the small pauses people took before speaking, in the way others waited their turn, in how the world shifted slightly, simply because one person refused to be defined by how others saw her. This story belongs to her, but if you've ever been judged too quickly, spoken over, or left out, then maybe it belongs to you, too.